coverage of Interop is brought to you by HP Networking. Change the rules to enable the cloud. Also brought to you by Citrix and GoToMeeting. Go over to GoToMeeting.com, click the Try It Free Now button, and enter in the word podcast for a 30-day free trial. And also Telestream and Wirecast. Produce your show straight from your computer right to the internet with Wirecast. Geekazine is a proud member of the TechPodcast.com network. If it's tech, it's here.
As she said, my name's Tim Swiader. I'm a senior program manager with HP. I've been with, came across as part of the 3Com acquisition and was with 3Com since '96. So I've seen one or two things through the industry, and it's been a fun ride. And with the announcements that you heard yesterday around our Flex networks, I really believe that we're back at having some fun. It's just been switching and standard routing for the last 5 or 6 years, but now with some of the things that HP is doing, we're back to having some fun. This is Jeff Enters.
Hello everybody, I'm Jeff Enters, technology consultant and the lead architect for the Interop network, the technology consulting side of HP.
So what we're here to talk about today is the Interop net, all this gear behind us. What Interop net does is they provide all the services for the show. So both wireless and wired, that's all their responsibility. So everything that these booths are doing eventually comes back here if they want to go outside on the network. So how does all this happen? Well, all this actually happens. It starts with a contract. UBM sends out a basic RFP and says, here's what we'd like to do for the next year. Then whatever vendors want to participate, they respond, and then UBM selects them. So this year, UBM selected both us and Cisco to deliver a good portion of the network. They brought us together in a meeting at the end of January and said, all right, we got you all in here, let's figure out who's going to do what and really start carving this up. Well, as you can imagine, having two big vendors like us, we both wanted to do everything. And so there was a lot of give and takes, if you will, to get it to this point, but landed in a really, really good place. This is a truest form of a rapid deploy network. This gear was all in boxes a month ago. And so what we did is we came together in San Francisco at the end of March and spent 2 weeks racking and stacking all the gear and moving through all the logical configurations. At the end, all of this gear had to work. You could walk into any port, something else in another port, and those two things had to talk together. We got down to that granularity. Once we all agreed that we were done, then they pulled the power, took out the plugs, the interconnection plugs, closed up the racks, and put them on semi-trucks. Drove those out here on Monday of last week. Well, they showed up late Monday. Tuesday morning, they opened up the back doors to the convention center and drove the trucks in. And it was like a bunch of ants with forklifts. Those guys had those trucks unloaded in no time. By Tuesday evening, this glass and the racks were setting where you see them set now. Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock, they were powered up. By Wednesday 11, we were connected to the internet and we're talking. And so you want to talk about an example of fast deploy networks, you're seeing one here. So this network will be up for about another 4 days for the most part, and then after that it's the reverse process. You can all tear it down and it goes back in trucks and it'll sit in the warehouse for a couple months in preparation for Interop New York. So it has one more life to live before it's all back in boxes. So that's the high level overview of Interop Net. I'm going to let Jeff come in here and deep dive a little bit more about some of our topology maps and some of the technology that we have inside these walls. Jeff?
So we'll start out by taking a look at the topology map as Tim mentioned. up here just to get an idea of what we have here, right? We got the show floor network and off show floor network is kind of the two networks. What InteropNet does, we have there's 3 colos that they own. It's provided by Quest. So Sunnyvale, California, Denver, and then Newark, New Jersey. So they have those 3 colos. Cisco's in the Sunnyvale colo, Viata's in the Denver colo, and then HP has the Newark colo. So here at this show, there's 1 gig that comes out of Sunnyvale down to the show, and 1 gig that comes out of Denver down to the show. So we actually, as part of that setup that we do in Brisbane, California, about a month ago, that 2 weeks, they actually simulate all of that with DS3 lines instead of actual gigs. So we do as best we can to simulate what it will actually be at the show. So as we move to New York, for the New York show later this year, those 2 gig feeds will be coming from Newark and from Denver. Whatever they're doing, any kind of security, maybe demonstrations, things like that. So we really need to leave it as wide open as possible. You have to provide a stable network. And again, in 2 weeks to set it up in Brisbane, California, and then 2 weeks here of it actually up and running. So it's a very challenging environment. One of the other things that we use to help make that happen is our IMC product. Single pane of glass management to do all this. So we can set it up that is constantly monitoring, it's doing backups at all times. It's also doing things like, not only does HP have access to go into our switches and routers, but so does everybody else in this NOC. So we have to constantly monitor any changes that are being made in case somebody goes in and decides, I think it'd be better if HP did it this way. So we have to constantly watch those kind of things, and that's what IMC gives us. And of course, all the alerting that goes along with that. The Newark colo will be maintained year-round. The next 365 days, or just shy of that, we'll actually be maintaining that colo and all the services that InteropNet needs in that colo. So again, we'll be constantly monitoring that and making sure everything's up and running there.
So one of the true powers of the Flex network that you heard a lot about yesterday is this fact that this is virtualized. And so we talk about the Sunnyvale, the Denver. So you think about, I have this campus, how am I going to manage it? Do I really have to have all the gear in the biggest center? And the answer is no. I mean, your management team could sit up in Newark, New Jersey as an example, yet be able to manage something as big and complex as all of this, or down to a five cabinet remote office. So it's really cool what we're doing around our FlexNet management.
Now, you said you're using IMC to monitor. Is that just the HP networking equipment, or is that the entire network?
It's a great point you bring up there. So being able to manage, IMC gives us the flexibility of multi-vendor management and visibility, right? So visibility being the key for us, because if we're starting to have a problem and we're looking at our stuff, and so maybe we don't have connectivity somewhere or something like that, right? We can immediately look at all the vendors' pieces, because it's not just us and one other vendor in here, right? It's a bunch of 20 different vendors, I think, this year, something like that. So we can look at all the different vendors' equipment to see, are they having problems? Because we actually register with them to receive traps. So can we see them? We're constantly doing like syslogging and things like that. So if somebody's making changes, we can actually see all that happens. So it's a great point you bring up. You can't just sit there and focus on that one silo being our equipment. We need to be able to see all different parts, and so that helps us to troubleshoot what's going on. So yeah,
so every piece of networking equipment is being monitored by IMC.
Correct.
Well, right. We're looking at it only for our use.
Yeah.
UBN, the show management host, they selected Script Logic this year to do the overall on-show. And science. Yep. And to manage the overall, both off-show, all the stuff out there, and then everything in here as well. So for our own edification and being that we like to be in control of our own worlds, we have our management platform actively watching as well.
It's always fun to see, who's noticing something going wrong first, right? And again, in an environment where, call it 6-7 days, but the show floor, being the key part of this, is only open for 3 days. So it's not like, I don't know, we're seeing a little bit of pack loss here, we'll work on that next week. No, it could be a prelude to something much bigger problem. So even the small things really need to be run down immediately, and you have to, again, very dynamic, very fast paced. You have to be able to respond and see something before the booth. If the booth is notifying us, it's late, right? They should be coming to us and say, yes, we understand that that's happening, and we're already working it. That's the idea behind it.
What do you guys use the F5, the load balancers for? I'm trying to think in my mind, you know.
I tell you what,
You guys are just doing internet services. I would think that F5 would be doing that on their booth, not. Yeah, thank you.
You guys can absolutely stop by F5, or I can have one of them come out and talk more about it. But what they are doing has actually been pretty impressive. Some pretty impressive stuff. So all of our, syslogs, SNMP traps, DNS, everything else. I mean, we are pointing all services, even SMTP, pointing all services to them, and then they are pointing in the right direction. So they have a little bit different role than they have in some other situations. But,
So I would have expected if I was a booth vendor, you guys would come to me with those RFPs saying, what do you need? Okay, I need 512K of bandwidth down, meg up, or whatever else, and that's what you give them. Dedicated internet out. I did not think that you'd be giving them, do you need SMTP? Do you need DNS? Do you need, are you getting at that granular level?
No, so the SMTP, so DNS, yes. The SMTP, the syslogs, and things like that, that is actually for us, for all of our gear here, so that way, instead of, all of these 20 different vendors having to point to 7 different management platforms, point to one.
You're pointed to a bib, and then the bib figures out exactly where to park it.
It really works out well for that.
It's interesting.
Yep. But,
I'm sorry if butting in here or whatever. How do you do IP allocations and all that stuff? Sort of the logistics of getting a vendor's booth up and running,
So there's a couple different options. Either it's DHCP or static, so a booth can request the static IP. Okay. So, and it's another thing to really think about. If you think about from a kind of a securing your network, not necessarily securing them, but securing your network, right? If you start adding static IPs, it becomes a little bit more of a challenge than just saying everybody only gets DHCP. But yeah, so it's DHCP and it's static IPs. So them all relayed back. And,
is there any separation, firewalling, or anything like that between the vendors, or no? Okay.
Nope.
Except very trusting, open.
Or you guys VLANing at least, so you at least have a layer 2 boundary.
We do some separation. So from a booth to booth, the two booths are right next to each other. Yeah, it's pretty much layer 2. They're pretty much wide open. But then we do some stuff to VLAN as much as we can to protect ourselves. That if there is an issue, we can isolate it somewhat. But yet at the same time, you have to start thinking about things like wireless roaming, especially as it relates to IPv6. So you start trying to roam across, and how do you handle that? Now you start going across multiple VLANs. It doesn't become so easy anymore, right? In the 4 world, a little easier, you can tunnel back, but you start getting into even the 6 LAN and other situations, right? Anytime you start doing wireless roaming across multiple VLANs, it can become challenging along with other things.
And you're using the Xeris arrays for...
Xeris has everything show floor. They have everything off show floor level 2, which is this way, and then Cisco has wireless up on the 3rd floor off show floor.
And it all comes back through this gear.
Yep. So essentially, what you've got is we've got 2 80 gig lags going up to a Cisco core, and then that core is the feed out to public. So there's 2 distributions, the core. And what'll be really interesting, I don't know if you guys are planning to come to the New York show, but a really interesting part of the New York show is that we still have an on-show floor, off-show floor concept. What becomes even more challenging in that environment is the show floor tears down, but the off-show floor has to stay up for a day or so after the show floor tears down. Well, if you tear all this stuff down right now, that off-show floor is... It's all over, right? Yeah. So there we actually have to do a little more of a split brain type environment, and it becomes more of a challenge. That's where our IRF is actually something that we've used in the past out at that show. It's been great. It's like 1,500 meters or something to off-show floor, no problem. 10 gig, single mode, and 1 virtualized chassis. Get done, power one off, the other one immediately takes over.
But this is HP sponsored. Why am I seeing the Cisco 6500?
So the Interop net is provided by the Interop team, which is owned by UBM, and so that's where they put out the RFP saying, here's the different areas that we are offering to play in: wireless, phone, security, load balancing, switching, routing, right? They put out this RFP offering up all these different areas, and then all the vendors can respond and say, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do this, and like and get are two different things, right? But so a vendor can respond with all these things, and that's one of the things that we've always noticed about customers loving to come in and see this stuff, is they get really excited to see what the Interop net has picked up, because the Interop net and the people who run it are really some of the best in the industry, right? So if they're picking an HP product, or they're picking an F5 product, or whatever they're picking, is usually, you know, some of the best in the industry. And so it's really great to see, you know, they like to come in and see, okay, what are you doing for these different types of pieces of equipment?
I just thought it was interesting. I'm seeing the redundant HP switches and the redundant 6500 side by side. That's why I was asking why have one of each.
So we're doing 50% of the wired Ethernet drops. They're doing the other 50%. So we got basically all this down to our booth. Funny enough, they pick up right at about their booth and they do the rest of it.
So that was really more or less them, HP and Cisco, working it out with UBM, saying, well, we want to be a part of the case study, and basically.
Actually, historically, UBM has chosen to just do one vendor for everything, because you start getting in multi-vendor environments, in the past it's been challenging, right? And it's getting better and better, and this year they decided, you know what, we're going to prove it. We want to prove that you can run in a multi-vendor environment without any issues, not just your average multi-vendor environment where you slowly bring things in, but this is put it together, design it, what are the challenges, understand them, design for it, and again, all in a short window of time. So,
and there's some things still running around out in the market where they say, you know, Cisco and HP can't interoperate together, and when this RFP came out the way it did, we absolutely jumped on it because you can't refute it. I mean, there it is. They're both interoperating. They got the routing core. We have to connect to that. If all this stuff's going to talk outside, well, guess what? It is.
And then it's, you know, it's fun. I mean, you know, we're talking about things like, gosh, it's all just talk right now, nothing silent, but, you know, can we do maybe 40 gig for the next show? And so in this environment, it really gives an option for the vendors to sit there, not just from us and our competitors, right, but from other vendors, right, ScriptLogic, ScienceLogic, things like that. How can we integrate? How can we interoperate? Things like that. And so it really gives the vendors a great environment in a production network to try these things out and really see how they work with everything that you could possibly imagine at the edge, right? I mean, the stuff that people are throwing out of these booths is pretty crazy. I mean, some of the video streaming that happens out of here, and you'll handle those challenges and everything like that. So, and that's part of the reason, you know, is that Interop has been able to expand this and make this bigger and allow more and more vendors and spend some time on this, because they went to the colo, more stuff in the colo. So we don't spend as much time setting up the VM servers and things like that to start managing our network. Our VMs are sitting up in the colos, right? Our network management is sitting up in the colos, managed. So we can get all that prepped before as much as possible without the equipment actually being there. We get a lot of that stuff prepped ahead of time and then be ready for when the show goes. So.
Who did the voice? Who's doing the voice?
Cisco is doing the voice. Yep.
But I don't see any ace load balancers in there, so
No.
must be all F5.
It is, yep.
Which would be the HP choice.
So, yeah.
Not that that's the wrong choice.
And, you know,
I actually looked at both of them. I'm an F5 customer.
Another thing in this environment, you'll see some different tapping vendors, right? So one of the other challenges is if there is an issue, again, how fast can you respond? Well, you can't think, well, hey, can you go set up a port here and let's start looking at this and someone go play. No, it's immediate, right? And same thing with all three colos. That's why in the colos, each one of the colos have a 1 gig for IPv4 out-of-band management, 1 gig for IPv4 production, and then 1 gig for IPv6. So there's 3 gig links coming out of each one of the colos. And so if there's an issue, that out-of-band management network that we have going on in the colo, we use that to some taps. The taps sit all around, right? So if there's anything happening, we can see exactly what's coming in, what's coming out, what's going out. Because in a lot of situations here, we're stretching distances, pushing distance limits at all times. So being able to tap and say, we think that's what we're seeing, and be able to project the light at the right points and see where it's at and what the readings are is all very important stuff for us. So.
Doing with the disk arrays and all that stuff, is that just part of your management infrastructure back here, or is that?
Let's take a look and see
I don't know quite what it is.
That's a lot of disk.
It is.
Yes and no.
Well, for out-of-band management, I mean, you said out-of-band.
Yeah, that's not one of those.
Let me go find out.
Yeah, we can go ask. I'm not sure.
Sorry, guys.
I can't.
So,
Yeah, I just can't.
Geekazine at Interop is brought to you by HP Networks. Change the rules of networking to enable the cloud. Check out hp.com for more information about all their great new ideas in flex branding. Geekazine is also brought to you by Citrix and GoToMeeting. If you need to meet with somebody and can't go to where they are, they can't go to where you are, then you should try GoToMeeting. For PC, for Mac, for iPad, you can connect up and have a great online meeting in seconds. To try this, all you have to do is go over to gotomeeting.com, click the Try It Free Now button, and enter in the code PODCAST, and that will get you a 30-day free trial. That's all from gotomeeting.com. And finally, we're also brought to you by Telestream and Wirecast. All the live action you'll see with the banners and the switching of cameras, that's all done through my PC through Wirecast. So go over to Telestream, go over to geekazine.com, click on the Telestream link, and that'll get you there for you to create some great video on your mobile device.